Hello and welcome to the debate. I'm your host Rana Maqbool with you at PTV World. In today's show, we will be taking a look at the current political situation of the country, of course, in light of what has been going on for quite some time, especially in the aftermath of the 9th of May. There is a lot that is expected within this week as well. We also know, of course, that since the 9th of May, we've seen an exodus of the leaders from Pakistan Tehreek-e-Insaf, and a number of them, of course, had been arrested, and post that we have seen that they have talked about how they're parting ways with the current PTI chairman, and that they are either no longer part of the political arena or the party. And it's interesting in terms of what is happening now with different factions emerging, rumors about a different party also coming up, and whether or not that is going to impact the prospects of the other political parties as well, with the PDM chief also claiming that the elections are most likely not going to be held from a single platform, and the parties all have their different agendas and manifestos. And it's important in terms of the impact this is going to have both on the PMLN and the PPP and the way they want to move forward, particularly with the people who are leaving PTI, and what sort of campaign can we expect. At the same time, we also know that there is a lot of chaos in terms of what is going to happen, and the kind of investigation that is continuing into the violence of May 9th and the elements that attach it to the Pakistan Tehreek-e-Insaf and many leaders who apparently have been part of this. And according to a recent presser by the Punjab IG police, this is important in terms of what has been going on, and that there is a lot of evidence with reference to calls that have been obtained, including the name of Dr. Yasmin Rashid. So we'll take a look into that as well, as to what sort of political involvement there is by the Pakistan Tehreek-e-Insaf. At the same time, we also know that the current PTI chairman's nominee of his successor, Mr. Shah Mahmood Qureshi, has also been released from jail today, and we've also seen that he in his stance has not spoken about anything with regards to leaving the party or politics, but in fact has said that he will be meeting with the current PTI chairman, and then he will be talking about what the next step is and the way forward. And it seemed like he was taking a good stronghold of the party, and what is of course to emerge is something that still remains to be seen, and what sort of a scenario will that actually play around, and how much of its involvement is going to center around the current PTI chairman. So it's going to be interesting to see what's going to happen. At the same time, we know that a number of cases are still going on against the current PTI chairman, especially of course with regards to what has happened, and then previous cases related to Al Qaeda Trust and others as well. What is the future of those cases, particularly when the parliament and the judiciary is also at loggerheads in terms of the credibility of the benches, and the Chief Justice of Pakistan is also important to take a look at. We also know that the Supreme Court took up the matter once again of the commission that was probing into the audio leaks, and this is important in terms of the constitution of the bench, to which the government had earlier opposed as well, pointing out conflict of interest, and that the Chief Justice of Pakistan and two other judges should not be part of the bench and should recuse themselves of it. And this is important in terms of how this is going to then impact the credibility of the commission and its findings. For now, we know that a number of reports and documents, especially previous court orders, have been highlighted and have been asked to be made part as evidence in terms of how these proceedings will continue, especially in terms of the credibility of the audios themselves and the issues of rights of privacy, and whether or not these can actually be presented in the courts as evidence, and whether there is going to be any room for such audio leaks to even be allowed, and whether there needs to be an investigation into inquiring about who actually is involved behind them. So a lot, of course, has been going on, and a lot still remains to be seen, and so we're going to explore further what is going on both in the political domain and then what is happening with reference to the courts as well. For this and more, as always in the studios, I've been joined by senior analyst Farooq Batafi. We've also been joined in the studios by Rana Maqbool Ahmad, Senator PMLN. Thank you very much, Rana Sahab, for being part of the show today. And we will be joined shortly by Barrister Shabir Shah as well, Advocate Supreme Court of Pakistan, on the online, and so hopefully we'll also have him as part of the discussion. But Rana Sahab, let me start with you, considering what has been going on, and a lot of discussion has been centering around the future of Pakistan Tehreek-e-Insaf and how that's going to be put forward. It seems that according to what we've been hearing from leaders from the PMLN, including the Interior Minister, he says that this is not something that the PMLN is worried about, especially in terms of other factions emerging, especially that coming in from Mr. Jahangir Tareen, and that the way forward is going to be something which perhaps will not be seeing Pakistan Tehreek-e-Insaf as a very important or significant force, especially in the upcoming elections. In terms of what has been going on and the kind of evidence that has been spoken about regarding their involvement in May 9th, what do you think is the current scenario, given the fact that we have so many leaders already departing ways with the current PTI chairman, but now we also have Mr. Shah Mahmood Qureshi out of jail, and his involvement back within the party may have created perhaps a change of course in terms of what we were expecting. What do you think?
Thank you, Sana. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Patafi Saab, with respects to you.
Thank you, sir.
You have really almost you have given the full analysis in brief words about the political scenario presently which we are watching. As far as the grouping and regrouping of the politicians are concerned, that is under such conditions it does happen. But you have mentioned about Muslim League, PMLN. They are not concerned about the grouping or regrouping, more so because they have already their vacancies of candidates filled. It's an old party, and they have very established cadres. So people have been objecting to it. Why the fugitives or the dissidents or the people who are leaving PTI are not coming towards PMLN? It's not that they were not eager to come. They were very eager to come, but they have been sent a message loud and clear. Gentlemen, it's not easy and possible for us to accommodate you, because we have got our own people who are struggling there for the last quarter of a century, and they have suffered. They have undergone not many predicaments. They have undergone imprisonments and other tribulations as political workers and the political leaders. So therefore it's not possible. We ask them that you get aside and we give the tickets to the people who have just entered into our cadre. This is not possible. So therefore their influx into Muslim League will be very, very marginal, and Muslim League PMLN is very choosy to have people there. There are already some claimants sitting in the National Assembly, the first group of dissidents. They have been asking PMLN to be accommodated. I don't think so all of them can be accommodated. But as far as this aspect of Muslim League standing on its feet as usual, that is absolutely clear and established one. The other parties, because they have a lot of scope, like People's Party and other parties, and there are certain groups who are managing strength in a way. Maybe they try their luck, and maybe they succeed, maybe they don't succeed. But as far as PMLN is concerned, it's a very secure phenomenon. Now you have mentioned about the investigation and impact on the PTI people who are involved in this carnage and this arson and this damage done to the integrity of Pakistan. So that is there, the investigations are on. As a professional myself, though I've been monitoring and watching, I think the quality of investigation could be better than this, because there are lot many pieces of impregnable evidence which are to be arranged and collected in such a manner that they are able to substantiate the guilt of the accused. And the basic condition for the investigation is fair investigation. It has to be fair. No innocent is to be touched even with a long pole, and no guilty is to be spared. That has to be the basic spirit. I think Inspector General Punjab is a very honest man, very exuberant commander. That is there, he'll ensure that. But as far as the forensic evidence and the ballistic evidence and the ocular evidence and the confessional evidence and extra confessional, judicial confessional evidence and all types of pieces of evidence are to be very carefully, arranged in such a manner that these are able to prove the guilt of the concerned person.
Absolutely, and that's a very important point, and I want to explore that further with Barrister Shabir Shah, who's joined us online, Advocate Supreme Court of Pakistan. Thank you very much, Barrister Shabir, for being part of the show. There is, of course, a lot of discussion around the involvement of Pakistan Tehreek-e-Insaf in the incidents of May 9th, but it's also, of course, important, as Rana Sahab was saying, to establish that evidence and to establish that link. And we've heard from the IGP Punjab Police that there is a lot of evidence available, especially in terms of call data records that link the people who were part of the violence to Pakistan Tehreek-e-Insaf leaders, including Dr. Yasmin Rashid. But of course, in terms of what the court has talked about, it has said that her name wasn't part of the FIR, or that there wasn't sufficient evidence in terms of what was provided. The investigation still remains incomplete, and this is something that is going on. But in terms of what we have heard coming out so far, and the way that this is moving forward, can you help us understand the complications involved in actually establishing responsibility, especially in terms of political elements and in terms of instigation of violence rather than the violence itself? And the kind of evidence that is being talked about, will that be sufficient, or what else will be needed to make sure that absolute responsibility is in fact established without any loopholes?
Thank you, Sana. And first of all, good evening to your guests, also, the gentlemen who are on your show. Uh, you see, you've asked three questions. The first question is pertaining to Dr. Yasmin Rashid. Let's get done with the first question right away. At the moment, Yasmin Rashid, she has been discharged by court. Now, when you discharge someone, that doesn't mean that you have acquitted that person. Discharge is a very special treatment, although it is available under the law. And that happens when the magistrate who's trying an offense considers that at this point in time, there isn't sufficient incriminating material. So the court feels that at this point in time, we are discharging the accused person. Now, for example, tomorrow, if there is anything which comes on record, any incriminating material, the court can still include her, and she could still be made part of the investigation. So she's not acquitted for all intents and purposes, but she's discharged at the moment. Now, tomorrow, if any incriminating material comes forward, she could always be included, and she can, for all intents and purposes, be even tried under the same offense. That is one thing. Although this question does arise, that if the court has considered that at the time when she was arrested, there was nothing on record, and obviously, whatever has come now or will come later, a question does arise as to why she was arrested in the first place. Now, that of course the investigation officer will have to answer, but that definitely is a question. Now, the second question that you asked, I think you specifically asked in terms of conspiracy. Uh, you see, for example, if we take the PTI chief, Imran Khan, and his instance, a question may arise that at that given time he was inside the jail. So, would it be, and can he be tried when obviously everybody knew that he was never part of this? I mean, in law, there are um, there are three separate offenses: conspiracy and aiding and abetting. The charges for the main offender, or if somebody is not present at the spot, it doesn't matter. You can still plan or conspire in respect of this incident if it is proved that he really was the mastermind of this entire plan or the unfortunate incident of ninth May attack. Then, for all intents and purposes, he could be given the same kind of punishment. So the law is very clear, but that all depends. if it is proved that he was really the mastermind of this plan. So, he would be charged for aiding and abetting or conspiring against the state. So that's quite clear. Could you remind me of the third question that you had asked?
My third question was how complicated it is to actually look at instigation of violence rather than the people who are actually part of the violent activities themselves, and what sort of evidence is required to establish this link, and who is then accountable for the action.
Oh, I think I've already answered that. A lot of times in criminal cases, what happens is that the main offender sits at home and he plans something, and then let's suppose his guards or anybody who's a frontman would go and actually carry out and commit the actual offense. But that doesn't mean whoever has actually planned the offense or is the mastermind would not be charged. So that's a pretty obvious situation, and it happens normally in everyday course. So it's not something unusual that it would not be the first time that somebody would be charged for conspiring against the state. So that's pretty clear. Although in the second round, when you do ask other questions, this would most certainly be relevant. And in your earlier program, I had given an opinion that it would be better if these attacks or the incidents are tried under the ATA. One of the reasons why I said it was because under the ATA, Anti-Terrorism Act, the ATC courts are well equipped. They have judges who are trained, who know how to lead evidence, who know the rigors of criminal law. So, if the judges who are trained and who do these jobs for evidence and recording evidence, if they were given this responsibility, the chances of a fair finding would be more, and also those innocent people who we cannot at this stage rule out under the garb of this trial before the military courts could also be dragged. So I maintain my opinion that these offenses should be charged under ATC.
All right. Also, lastly, can you clarify when we talk about the people who have condemned the incidents of May 9th, will the condemnation of an incident be any value in terms of the law when we talk about putting those who are responsible for the incidents of May 9th accountable? Will that something that would factor in terms of the consequences?
I mean, it would not wash off their criminal acts. It's like if somebody commits a murder and comes on TV and says that I'm so sorry for it, it would not help him at all. So, I mean, if you condemn it, fine, but if you are involved in it, you'd be taken to task. You'd have
All right.
to face the consequences.
All right, absolutely. Farooq, when we look at the situation, there is, of course, a lot in terms of what the PTI is currently dealing with, or what sort of movement is going on within the party. Right. And there is, of course, the nominee that has, of course, been appointed out by the current PTI chairman. That, of course, has been released today. Mr. Shah Mahmood Qureshi spoke about how he still is going to go ahead with the ideology or principles that his party stood for, and that after discussion with the PTI chairman, this is going to be something that we're going to hear from him as to what will be the next step forward. But as of now, where the current where the party actually stands, especially in terms of different blocks emerging, or the rumors about a different party emerging also under the leadership of Jahangir Tareen. What sort of options do you think are available at the moment for Mr. Shah Mahmood Qureshi or Pakistan Tehreek-e-Insaf to even survive as a party? And then also, when we talk about simultaneously the kind of linkages and the way that the evidence is pointing towards PTI's involvement with May 9th, will there be enough room for political leaders such as Shah Mahmood Qureshi or others as well, who have, even if they have parted ways with the current PTI chairman, to actually move forward with enough credibility that they can forget about the incidents of May 9th?
Right, Sana, there are two aspects which are very important because earlier you were talking about prosecution and how various people are actually facing law. At that time, I was also thinking about the weak prosecution that Rana Sahab earlier mentioned, And then barristers have also said that how can you apprehend a person when FIR was not very clear about the fact. My humble submission is that we have seen a very effective interference campaign continuing in the country. Immediately after May 9th, when actions started taking place, at that time, repeatedly people were helped in evading law. One example, amazing example, is Chaudhry Parvez Elahi, the former Chief Minister of Punjab. Every time he was apprehended, somebody about to be apprehended, somebody would tip him off and he would disappear, right? Similarly, after he was apprehended, twice he was presented in a court of law, and without trial, the judge at that time actually let him go. So that would also suggest that there is some kind of interference. Remember, these are very powerful people who were until last year, in Parvez Elahi's case, only until a few months ago, who were in power, and they must have holdovers in the system. And then I keep on mentioning the Chief Justice of Punjab, Lahore High Court, and his relationship, especially his son-in-law, his involvement in politics as well. So because of all that, there seems to be some kind of laxity that is at play here. That cannot be actually confused with lack of evidence or how the system should function. If you ask me, I would call it collusion and conspiracy, right? So that continues. But regarding Shah Mahmood Qureshi and the way PTI seems to be balkanizing, I tell you, yesterday also we discussed those elements that you actually brought up. For example, the so-called Democrats group. And I said that there are many admirable people in the party, but Murad's Ras and people like them, it is like Shahbaz Gill actually stands up and starts claiming that he is going to lead a party. Who is going to actually follow him? So right now the situation with Shah Mahmood Qureshi is, and regarding our political punditry is, that people, because there's a lot of uncertainty, we have never been in these uncharted waters. So punditry seems to behave in a very funny way. They seem to think that if they stop talking, perhaps people's brains will start functioning. So they never stop and they keep on talking. At this moment, I kept on hearing that perhaps Shah Mahmood Qureshi has been released, as per a grand plan to, rehabilitate PTI or something of that sort. That is not the case. The only debate that is going on right now is that whether PTI balkanized will be, will create a vacuum that will create a problem for the system or not. So I think what I have heard, that Shah Mahmood Qureshi kept on pitching this thing, that let me go and talk to Imran Khan, the former chairman, and once he talks to him, tomorrow he is going to meet with him. So once he meets with him, then perhaps there is a possibility of some kind of solution or counter argument that can be given. So initially I think that his pitch was heard and he was allowed to actually go and try doing something of the sort. But I don't think that it is going to have that kind of impact. What we are witnessing right now is collapse of a political party, and that will continue.
Right, but Farooq, can you also help us understand what you think in terms of whether or not the lack of PTI will actually create a vacuum or not, and is going to create problems for the political scenario?
Look, it is like, having teeth in your mouth. One day there's a tooth there, the next day it isn't. So there's going to be, nobody can say that its absence is not going to be felt. But how do you actually look at the turnout on the election day? Is that going to be, in Pakistan it has never exceeded, not to my knowledge, 60%, right? With that kind of turnout, if more people are disheartened, what exactly becomes of the electoral process? But there is always a chance that, if the state is communicating with the people who were voting for the previous, party, and if the state can communicate and convince them, then there's always a chance that there will be enthusiasm for the system no matter what. And remember that it is a democratic system, so we are supposed to have as many parties as possible. one party goes and another emerges. It might not be Jahangir Tareen's party, it might not be Shah Mahmud Qureshi's party or Murad Ra's party, it can be anybody's party. So there will always be the constructive and destructive process that continues because it is the market of ideas.
All right. Rana Sahab, the situation, of course, is important also in terms of the upcoming elections, and of course, everyone is looking forward to the elections being held on time as well. But where we stand today, especially in terms of how the political parties, especially the ruling elite, are looking towards what they want to do ahead is important also. We know that perhaps the way that the different parties are going to contest elections will not be from the platform of the PDM, and they'll have their own agendas. You can also elaborate further on what the PML has in mind in terms of that. And also we've heard that the leader of PMLN, Mr. Nawaz Sharif, is going to be leading the campaign, but there are of course a lot of obstacles towards his involvement or participation within the country as well, and how actively you think that he's going to actually participate in that and the effect that that's going to have on the campaign. I want to understand what the PMLN has in mind in terms of its future strategy and political stance currently, especially in terms of the kind of political chaos we are seeing, and also the kind of economic crisis that we are looking at, and with a very difficult budget coming soon.
Thank you, Sna. A word about Mr. Shah Mahmud. Knowing him for the last almost half of a century, because I've served in his area, he was very intimate to me, his temperament, and there is a consensus about his temperament, or about his role. For the last over 30 years, we have been hearing that once opportunity is given, Shah Mahmud will be the leader of a party. So that time has come. Because they know it, the people at the helm of affairs and who are dealing with these stalwarts, political stalwarts, who will be there to be a moderate person who will serve the purpose and who will not resort to any fragmentation, any derogatory language or provocative diction. So they think Shah Mahmud can contribute, unlike the chairman of the PTI. As far as chairman is concerned, I don't think so his role will be there. His role is ruled out for all practical purposes, because there are so many cases against him which are very serious, and heinous offences have been committed. So I don't think so, as far as law is concerned, he can be spared. So let's make our mind that Shah Mahmud will be leading the party.
Okay, and
one thing more, if I'm permitted.
Yes.
But that is for sure, we should understand the people of PTI who have resorted to terrorism, they are not likely to be spared. Though the tempo and the speed of investigation and the quality of investigation is not what we expected, because generally if such cases are completed within days and then they are put before the court and trial commences and trial finishes within a week or so and the first judgment is announced. So that has not happened. But there is a very strong realization as far as the decision-making echelons are concerned. They have taken the cognizance now and they'll proceed expeditiously on this.
Right. Rana Sahab, I just want to talk a little bit further about what you said regarding Mr. Shah Mahmud Qureshi. We, of course, earlier have spoken a lot about the fact that the PTA is perhaps more of a party that is based on an individual or one personality. And now that that personality seems removed from the party, there are these new people that are emerging, and you're mentioning Mr. Shah Mahmud Qureshi as the likely leader of the party. But in terms of what we're seeing forward, do you think that Mr. Shah Mahmud Qureshi will be able to have the kind of followers or the kind of support that the party previously enjoyed, and especially in comparison to leaders like Mr. Jahangir Tareen? Do you think that Mr. Shah Mahmud Qureshi will be the obvious choice for people?
This is not choice of the people, frankly, we must discuss this. It's a choice of the establishment as well. Needless to hesitate to give some comments on that. Everybody understands, because he suits the mindset of the establishment as well. He is not very resistant, he is not very unyielding. So therefore, he will, as far as Mr. Imran was concerned, you might remember that he was pampered and he was brought up and he was supported and he was made a leader actually.
Right.
But
I understand, but I believe we're parting ways from that, right? And we want to move ahead with something that, of course, is more towards the power of the vote and the people, I suppose, isn't it?
yes, that is there. But I think this is also not a very correct estimation about the votes. Once Muslim League PMLN was not moving at all, in the last meetings as well, we have been discussing how much was the difference between the votes of the defeated candidates and the victorious candidate. The first elections, by-elections, there was a difference of 150,000, whereas the Muslim League procured 8,50,000 and the PMLN backed 10 lakhs, 1 million. So despite the fact all those candidates were previously, those constituencies were of the PTI. Then the second by-elections, you might remember how much was the difference of votes, like Nankana is a huge constituency, were only of 10,000. Shizra and Imran Khan. Imran Khan got defeated in Multan, Imran Khan got defeated in Karachi. So therefore, it's perhaps a lot of hue and cry was made on ground. The pragmatic study was not carried out, and I assure you in the next elections, PTI will not be able to form the government because it will cease to be really a party with the genuine credentials. People have a lot of reservations about them.
All right. And Rana Sahab, I'll come back to you regarding my question about Nawaz Sharif, and we'll talk more about that as well. Barrister Shabir, the situation, of course, in terms of what we were earlier discussing, has been spoken a lot about different experts regarding whether a civilian court or a military court or an anti-terrorism court is the appropriate choice. And the Prime Minister recently in an interview also spoke about how the civilians, the people who targeted civilian installations will be tried in civilian courts, and those who targeted military installations will be tried in military courts. And I want you to also help us understand all of these options versus each other as to what needs to be the step forward, whether or not we can actually make such a distinction in what has transpired. And add to that, when we take a look at the way that the situation is currently moving forward with the current PTI chairman and the large number of cases against him, how much do you think that the way the credibility of the courts is being questioned by the parliament will also be something that will feature in terms of what we've seen earlier, the way the relief is given in the past, and how we will see this also evolve in the future, especially now when the table seemed to be against him?
Okay, so you asked two questions. Let me try to answer the first one in respect of civilian courts and military courts. The answer is very simple. You see, previously you would remember that for the first time, when after the Peshawar attacks, the civilians had to be tried under the military courts. A constitutional amendment was brought, which was the 21st Amendment. And even in that constitutional amendment, two things were very clear. One, that there was a sunset clause. After 2 years, those military courts, which were trying civilians for the first time, ceased to exist. Therefore, a question would arise whether or not a constitutional amendment is required. When previously one was required, why not another one is required now? So that is my opinion. That is why that if you need to try civilians under a military court, you need a constitutional amendment. Number two, even under that constitutional amendment, it was specifically stated that for the purposes of this amendment, the religious sects and religious parties, they could be banned, but political parties would not be covered and would not fall within the ambit of this amendment. So that is also another question, that if you are a member of a political party and not a religious sect or a religious party, could you be tried under an ordinary military act when previously you could not be tried even after a constitutional amendment. So I think my legal opinion is very clear that insofar as these attacks are concerned, which are horrible attacks, and they should be taught a lesson so that nobody should ever try to make the same mistake. But end of the day, ATC court is for terrorists, and the scope of ATC courts has been now limited by a seven-member judgment of the Supreme Court, which says that these courts should only try those cases uh, which fall under the definition of terrorism. So every murder would result in terror. But no, the ATC courts, their limit has been extremely narrowed down so as to try only those cases, such as this one. So that is why I feel, in the larger interest of things, end of the day, we are governed by a constitution. And in our country, there is still rule of law, rule of constitution. And when the constitution dictates one thing, any act which goes beyond the ambit of the constitution, I see it as unconstitutional. So that is my first answer. And it does not matter whether the worthy prime minister is of the opinion. My legal opinion can be different and would be based on my constitutional interpretation. It could be that the worthy prime minister is of a different opinion, and I respect that. Insofar as your second question is concerned, the credibility of courts, that's a question which touches my heart, and I am most concerned about this myself, because it does not matter if a country's economy is suffering, we can still uh, stand up. We would, inshallah, still revive. But once your perception of judiciary, once that is tarnished, and I see it being tarnished every single day, and it is extremely unfortunate. That is a serious question. And, lately in the past few months, we have seen so many events. First, it started that literally we saw two different Supreme Courts for all intents and purposes. There are still, as we speak, two different Supreme Courts. There are two different blocks. So imagine the plight of a litigant who appears before the court and has a case to plead. Uh, you know, what would he think? If he thinks that the apex court, the judges of the Supreme Court, before whom he has taken his dispute, but they have a dispute amongst themselves. So the perception of judiciary is terribly tarnished. And then look at the present events, for example. Although the legality of it I've spoken about previously in your program, but look at the optics. The A commission which I maintain was unconstitutional for the purposes. Do I have one more minute?
Yes, absolutely. Go ahead.
Okay, so the commission, the Qazi Faiz Isa commission, the government has the right to constitute a commission, but in a matter like this, it is unprecedented. The TORs of the commission are that this commission, which is performing in a way executive functions, the commission is to inquire into the conduct of judges. Now, this has not happened before. And eventually, this is the mandate of Supreme Judicial Council. There is a reason why we have a Supreme Judicial Council. In India and in other countries, if you want to inquire into a conduct of a judge, uh, he has to be impeached. The entire parliament by two-third decides and conducts a trial. It is it is then that a judge has to go home. So such is the importance of judiciary in other countries. But in our country, Supreme Judicial Council is the only council which would conduct an inquiry into a conduct of a judge. So that's why it's a very serious question. But look at the optics. The commission is inquiring into a specific matter, and a bench is constituted headed by the worthy honorable chief justice, and the bench grants a stay. Now, as a lawyer, I can understand, but what about the nation which already thinks that the judiciary is divided into two. So I believe, and through your program, I want to make a comment that the least the Honorable Chief Justice should have done in this case, that he should have stepped aside from this bench, although a different bench could have been constituted, but he should not have remained part of the bench, because
Right.
everybody now knows maxim that a judge
Right,
cannot be a
I
judge in his
understand
own
that, and I want to talk a little bit more about that as well. Farouk, there are of course a lot of discussions around what the Supreme Court has done or not done, or what the Chief Justice of Pakistan has done or not done. And this case is also important in terms of how we're going to be seeing those questions evolve. The directions regarding the elections, of course, a number of times before have also been rejected by the Parliament. We now see again that the Chief Justice has commented regarding the political situation and said that the parties need to come down on a date, which is again something that we have questioned before, as well as to why it's coming in from the courts. But given the current matter regarding these audio leaks, what do you think in terms of the hearing that took place today and the way that different records were produced as being part of the investigation? And then also a matter which seems perhaps really simple in terms of the issues of conflict of interest and what the Chief Justice should be doing. It has now sort of become a problem for not just the Commission, but also in terms of how the way that the Parliament wants things to proceed is now coming, is creating rifts both from within the judiciary and with the Parliament and the judiciary as well.
Right, Sana, and that is an important question. Let me remind everybody that today who were the members of the bench who were hearing this case. And let me read the name. Chief Justice Umar Ata Bandyal, then Justice Ijazul Hassan, Justice Munib Akhtar, Justice Syed Hassan Azhar Rizvi, and Justice Shahid Wahid. All of them are considered to be the like-minded judges. Let me take you back to the issue of the previous government's disqualification, or the case that was there, who was critically part of the bench, Justice Umar Ata Bandyal, Munib Akhtar, and Ijazul Hassan, right? Then when it comes to Punjab's case, election case, once again the very same three names. Similarly, today also the three were there. And surprise, surprise, tomorrow another case is fixed, and that is, challenges to Supreme Court review of Judgments and Orders Act. And again, who is going to hear that case? Chief Justice of Pakistan, then Munib Akhtar Sahab, and then Ijazul Hassan. So what are you telling me? 12 out of 15 justices, perhaps the Chief Justice cannot either trust, or perhaps he doesn't think that they're competent enough. Then I've also mentioned to you the case of Lahore High Court's Chief Justice, Justice Amir Bhatti. Amazingly, in Tosha Khana's case, everything is almost on the record, where a judge was changed because the Chief Justice wanted him gone. With that kind of interference that is going on, Sana, do you think that the actual aggrieved party, that is the Army of Pakistan, will trust any of these institutions? Regarding what Barrister Sahab was saying, that only religious or sectarian elements can be tried in military courts, I was wondering whether Idris Khatak was one of these people, or was he a human rights activist? So all these things are important to remember, Sarah. With this kind of dumpster fire going on in the capital, what exactly do you expect to come out of it? You are absolutely right that there is going to be further confrontation with the executive, because our Honorable Chief Justice of Pakistan can use telepathy to stop decisions of the Parliament. He can even outrule the decisions of the executive. But whenever something comes up with the conduct of the Supreme Court of Pakistan, amazingly, all of a sudden it becomes an attack on the Supreme Court or Judiciary of Pakistan. That is not all. With the kind of situation that is going on, the people who are sitting on this bench, not only Chief Justice of Pakistan, but also Justice Munib Akhtar and Ijazul Hassan, their names have also come up in the audio. So what has happened? The actual question was regarding the conduct of justices, whether they are implicated in political matters or not. and somehow it has become a debate about privacy. A debate about privacy that is so close to the court's heart that it was going on, these audio leaks were going on for past 7, 8, 10 months, 1 year. And a case is pending before the court of, Supreme Court of Pakistan regarding this matter itself, but it was never taken up. If you make Supreme Judicial Council and any recourse to justice impossible, what exactly is going to happen? Then there is going to be some parallel system. And whether it is constitutional or not, this, although it is being heard, I'm not a barrister, I'm not an officer of court, so I'm not going to actually, shoot my mouth. But with due respect, the humble submission is the Supreme Judicial Council is not essentially an investigative authority. A commission can be made. I understand this desire that you have to first perform ablution before even looking at judiciary or its building. That is everyone's taste. But my humble submission is, if there is an issue of conduct of justices, it has to be probed. Okay. And remember, today my Honorable Chief Justice of Pakistan is stunned by the fact that who is bugging these telephone lines. Right. My humble submission is one-liner. My humble submission is, when you were actually mentioning that you sat one justice down with you just to communicate or give somebody some kind of secret message, what exactly were you implying? You didn't know whence these tapes have come?
Absolutely. Rana Saab, you wanted to add something to that, and also previously what I asked regarding Mr. Nawaz Sharif's involvement in the campaign.
I will only mention, as the point raised by Honorable Barrister, about the trial of the accused in this case. As far as law is concerned, under the Army Act, they are competent to try these people. But if he's talking about the propriety of this action, yes, that is there. But somehow or other, he was talking about the sunset clause in the constitutional amendment, right? That was regarding this religious terrorism and other terrorism. But this is directly offensive, has been launched against the armed forces. So therefore, they have a right to try them. And I personally think, of course, they'll be having legal assistance by the government officials as well, by the prosecutions. I don't think so. There'll be massive injustice. There'll be justice, and they have been found to be very careful. Had they been reckless, as generally it's understood or felt, they would have by now convicted not many people. They have not even tried even if one person.
Okay.
So they are very careful. As far as he also mentioned about the trial of the leaders, yes, if there are pieces of evidence regarding criminal conspiracy, regarding abetment, regarding planning, and the senior most politicians are linked with this total conspiracy, then they have committed a culpable offense. They are to be tried. And now you have asked about Mia, the leader, the Qaid of. He will, inshallah, will be here.
Will he be here?
Yes.
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 All right. Thank you very much.
To lead the processions of election campaign.
All right. Thank you very much, Rana Saab, for being a part of the discussion. Thank you, Barrister Shabir Shah. Thank you, Farooq, for being part of the debate as always. That's all that we have from the show. We'll see you tomorrow.